Chance? Do you think it's by chance? Hello witches, and welcome back to Activist Witch, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they, and this is the video where we explore the folklore's tales and tradition of Britain and Italy and the old Roman pagan festivals for June 2025. But before we get started, let me remind you that I've opened a Ko-fi, and if you like what I do here, you can support me directly there with a one-off donation, a monthly donation, or even get a tarot reading with me Italian style. The low-income option starts at £5. And for the foreseeable future, all my profits from tarot reading go split evenly between Kuchus to Gaza, who support Palestinian refugees in Egypt, and the Good Law Project, who's trying to bring trans rights back to the UK. So if you decide to support me there, thank you so very much. Right, we have a lot to go through. I know kind of what's going on, and it's June, it's summer solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere, so there's something for everyone, a lot. First things first, Roman festivals, I am partial because during June there's a Vestalia. So the Vestalia were a festival that went on from the 7th until the 15th of June, the main day being the 9th. What I personally plan to do is just to clean and renew my altar. If I have the time and spoons, I wouldn't mind to actually do sort of a novena with Vesta. I have a candle that I specifically use to just spend time with her, which somebody could read as meditating with. And who knows might come up. So that's her festival, and that's personally what I look forward to. That being said, again, we have no time to lose, so let's go into the British tradition of the Almanac. I like that the British Almanac is somewhat attentive to celebrations in general, so this is what I found interesting. It's Gypsy, Roma and Traveller History Month, other than Prime Month, June. I didn't know. Did you know? I'm very glad to learn. And if you can point me actually to any kind of events, if there are like for LGBTQ History Month or Black History Month, I'd like to know that because I'd like to learn about that. So if you can point me in the right direction, do leave me a comment, let me know. Unsurprisingly, the main event is the 21st, 22nd of June, which is the solstice, the summer solstice, the longest day of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere. Even here it mentions St. John on the 24th. We're going to have a lot of St. John stuff when we go discussing the Italian folkloric tales. But even here it's mentioned. Interesting. St. John the Baptist, I guess, because of that. It's kind of all the saints, it kind of stands out because of that. And interestingly, this I didn't know as well, and I'm very glad that it says, the Islamic year 1447 begins at the sighting of the new moon. I imagine the new moon in Cancer then, which we are going to in a second. Actually, let's go into it now. Moons. Let's talk about the moons of June 2025. It's waxing crescent moon until Monday the 9th of June. As I mentioned before in this video, usually when the moon is growing, it's expanding. If you are the kind of witch that does spells, workings, rituals, any of those that have to do with development, expansion and growth, I don't know, I would say money spell off the top of my head, this is the time you do them in, so up until the 9th of June. Technically, really, up until Tuesday the 10th, because we have the full moon in Sagittarius on Wednesday the 11th of June. But here in the UK, it happens at like 8 AM, so really any working that you want to do with the full moon, you can start doing the night before on the Tuesday. So, full moon in Sagittarius, what does that mean? Whoa. I'll admit, I didn't know much about Sagittarius before searching for this video, but my favorite Sagittarius is Kellyanne Maddox, so just in case, because it's nice to mention friends, I'll mention Kellyanne to you. I personally don't consider Sagittarius as much fire because, in my experience, fire signs like Aries and Leo are all about the self. Somebody would say the ego, and I know because my moon is in Aries, so I'm not slugging anyone this time. Sorry, Imogen, for slugging Gemini, but I'm not trying to slug anyone this time. I'm just saying, personal experience with my moon in Aries, it can be about me. Sagittariuses don't feel like that to me. It's more about this energy brought to the community, and I think it might be because Sagittarius unexpectedly, well, not unexpectedly because I think it's gone on since the time of the Chaldeans, but Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, which is a very earthy planet. Would I say the Sagittarius is earth of fire? I'm not sure. I also think that it's kind of air of fire, though, because it has this intention to learn and be excited about learning, which again has to do probably with Jupiter, because Jupiter is about expansion and abundance, but also higher learning in, you know, the antique Hellenic and before astrology. So just in case, that's interesting to know. The Almanac reports the full moon in Sagittarius as a time to celebrate and expand. What does that mean? I mentioned that Jupiter is the planet that rules its sign, and it's mutable fire, so I guess that's why I feel like there's a hint of other elements here, is the fire that adapts. Drama queen. So, the Sagittarius full moon energizes spell for optimism and hope. You might invoke the Sagittarius moon for luck, abundance, expansion, positivity, and even favorable legal results. Because this full moon happens in the season of Gemini, because the sun is in Gemini, apparently the contrast between the Archer, Sagittarius, and the Twins, Gemini, invites reflection on the balance between gathering exciting information and actually transmuting it into meaningful wisdom. Apparently it's also a time for travel and adventure, which again, I see the expansion and new horizons and let me learn. Travel is a way in which we learn, believe you me. Meeting things that we haven't met before, it expands our mind. Good moon in Sagittarius. So unsurprisingly, because it's ruled by Jupiter, I would say spells that have to do with money, but also spells that have to do with learning and expanding your horizons. Maybe you are trying to further your studies. Maybe you're trying to do spells about memory for your studies is Jupiter and Sagittarius, but maybe also Mercury. But, you know, it's that kind of stuff. We are in waning moon until the 20th of June, Friday the 20th of June. Not because the new moon is immediately the Saturday, I'm actually gonna get there in a second, but you know, when we talk about waning moon, we talk about the moon going smaller and reducing, and so anything that you want to do, workings, spells, rituals that have to do with reducing something, removing something, this is the time to do it. Usually it has to do mainly with protection, with purification, banishment, removal of things you don't like. This is personally also the time that if you do any kind of health spells, I would do it in a waning moon, because ideally you are removing anything bad, any obstacles, which also reminds me, yes, if you're doing a road opener or a remove obstacle spell, this is the time to do that. We are in the last bit of the waning moon, the so-called balsamic moon, from the 20th to the 23rd of June. The balsamic moon is almost the dark moon, it's literally just a tiny little sliver of moon that you can still see before we go into new moon. And it's the darkest part of this, the darkest side of the moon. Insert Pink Floyd here. And because of that is the time that is most auspicious for anything that has to do properly with banishment. It goes dark, it goes completely removed, it goes completely cleared. So yeah, any proper banishment or full-on protection, usually I do in balsamic moon. And then we go into the new moon, and the new moon this time is in Cancer, because you know, the new moon is in the sign where the sun is as well, because it means that the moon and the sun are in the same side and position, so we don't see the moon because it's new. And yeah, there are probably people that explain it better than me. But the interesting part here is that Cancer is ruled by the moon. So there's a lot of potential here. Now, if I'm not wrong, Cancer is the cardinal water, because it's cardinal Cancer, fixed Scorpio, mutable Pisces. I'm sure about mutable Pisces. I don't think the Scorpio is the cardinal of water, so it must be Cancer. Hopefully I've got it right, we'll find out. Because of that, considering that the element of water is all about emotions and feelings and the inner world, I think it's kind of self-explanatory why this moon in Cancer, it's intense, it's about emotions, it's about your inner world. If you want to do workings that have anything to do, speaking of inner world, about your psychic abilities, apparently this is a time to do that. It's a new moon that is considered good to, as I said before, start new things. You do workings that start a process, start a path. It's the beginning, it's the seed that then will grow through the next lunar circle, or longer even than that. But for Cancer, for the moon in Cancer, that is something that you can do when it has to do with protection and nurture. Because it's ruled by the moon again, it's good for spells that are looking to create new beginnings in anything that has to do with your emotional internal world. And also because the moon rules Monday, it also has to do with close familiar connections. So anything that has to do with somebody that is close to you, that you care about, you can do it during this new moon in Cancer. Home protection, heart magic, exactly because again, it has to do with the family, the coziness, both of your house and of your inner world. This is the time to do that kind of magic, this new moon in Cancer. As I mentioned last month, the Almanac this year is set on a theme about megaliths, and the megalith for the month of June 2025 is the Callanish stones, which are on an island on the northwest of Scotland. I like this because there are apparently legends that go back to Roman times about this stone circle. Like, I'll put here the stone circle, you see it. It's very impressive. It's 13 stones, which, as a witch, we like the number. But also, all of the stones are at least 3 meters tall, which is, you know, it's always fascinating to me thinking about stone circles, and it has to do with these huge things, and how the heck did we move those? I don't know, but we like them enough that technically, I don't know if you know, Stonehenge has been moved. Those stones have been moved from Wales to Stonehenge, which is fascinating to me. Like, we liked those specific stones. Doesn't matter, I'm not leaving them behind. It's my stone. Still in the 1600s, apparently there were stories and legends that went on by word of mouth that describe this site as a place of worship for pagans and heathens, which, you know, as a witch, I love me a good stone circle. I cannot lie. I like a good stone circle and I cannot lie. Apparently the Roman references go back to 55 BCE when they talk about the stone circle that has to do, because most of stone circles do have to do with the lunar and the solar cycles. This one is also somewhat aligned with the Pleiades, which usually were considered the muses, and the muses had a lot to do with Apollo of Hellenic origin. And so there are stories that relate Apollo to this stone circle, which is quite a crossover episode. Oh, I have a quote. Would you like to read a quote? I'll read you a quote. So apparently, and this is something that I didn't know, but I feel that as witches, not only we care about astrology, but also when there are astronomical things and cycles, you know, astronomy and astrology being separated is just something of the 1900s. So I would, let's take a look into this. Now, while the sun reaches its highest, the moon will be at its lowest in June, but also its most beautiful. During this major lunar standstill year, the moon rises and sets at its most extreme points, north and south. At some times this year, it will be very high in the sky, and other times very low. This month, its lowest rise and fall will coincide with the full moon, which will make for some spectacular effects, particularly in the north, where the effect is more extreme. In some places, it will barely rise, and the moon looks its largest when close to the horizon. This is certainly something our megalith-building ancestors set great store by, and many stone circles have alignments towards the rising point of midsummer full moon at major lunar standstill. With this tool, they could have marked out the moon's 18.6-year cycle, keep track of the passing time, and predicted eclipses. I didn't know about the 18.6-year cycle, did you? Because I didn't. But apparently, even in the Roman times where we talked about Apollo coming in and visiting, basically, and doing this northerner holiday from Delphi, very northerner because it's even the north of Scotland. But yeah, it's interesting to see that these ideas, I mean, again, astrology and astronomy were the same thing before 100 years ago. I like me both. Right, the sun. We need to talk about the sun because I talk about sunrise and sunset all the other months. And shouldn't we talk about the sun in the month of the year here on the Northern Hemisphere where we have the most sun, kinda, yeah. So, the sun this month rises at the most northern east possible because it's going to be, again, the summer solstice. And on the summer solstice, the entire point of the solstice is that you know that the Earth is not it's not on its axis like this, it's on its axis like this. I'll put a picture here because I don't, yeah. But I'll put a picture and it will show you the Earth has this inclination. To that inclination, we owe the seasons to. If it just was standing straight, as most things that are straight are not the best for us. Queer supremacy.
I am. You can't see it, but I am face palming right now.
So anyway, the point of what is the actual solstice is not just around the longest day of the year, but it's because, due to this inclination, the Tropic of Cancer is exactly aligned to get the straight line of light from the sun. It happens the other way around when the sun is aligned to the Tropic of Capricorn, which is in the southern hemisphere, which is when we get the winter solstice here in the northern hemisphere, and they get the summer solstice instead. The picture probably have explained it better than me. So this is as much light as we're going to get here in the UK. On the 1st of June, the sunrise is at 4:48 a.m. here in Cardiff. So if you go further north, imagine what time is the sunrise up there on the 1st of June, which is now, which is today. What time was it today? Because I worry sometimes, because I know that seasonal affective disorder is a bad thing when this is winter here. But in the summer, do we ever sleep? Anyway, sunset still today, 1st of June, is going to be at 9:22 p.m., which is literal sunset, which means it's going to be light for longer. It's a lot of light. It's a lot of light. On the 30th of June, now there's a fascinating thing that I cannot... On the 30th of June, on the 30th of June instead, sunrise is going to be at 4:57 a.m., so it has moved a bit later, but sunset will be later as well at 9:35 p.m. There's a reason for this, I don't remember it, so Google it. The sea. The sea here in the UK gets warm-ish. In Llanelli, which is here in Wales, it gets up to 13 degrees. The water is 13 degrees. Party. Sea party. Beach party. As I mentioned before, we have to look at the tides because, especially here in Wales, the River Severn really is the sea, therefore it's tidal. If it's tidal, to me, it's the sea. We could discuss about the Thames because of that, but anyway. The spring tides, which are the strong, where there's a lot of different kind of tides, happen in conjunction with the full moon and the new moon. The other tides in between kind of happen in between those events because, you know, the pull of the moon has an effect as much as the pull of the sun does as well. Right, that being said, we have exhausted the information for the British Almanac for this month. Let's go to Italy! I do not advise for you to go to Italy, especially in the summer months, because I'm not gonna play the game of in my day, but in my day, Italy wasn't this hot in the summer. Like, there's something wrong. Like, climate change is real, and Italy is the actual proof. I think we will get desertification up to the Padana Plains within the next 100 years. So the desertification, like the Sahara, up to Italy, up until the north. But yeah, let's pretend that that's not the case, because we won't be here to see it. I mean, I think we will be here to see it, unfortunately, but... So as I mentioned, the main star for the month of June in Italian folklore is St. John. But let's get there in a second, because the first 13 days are devoted to St. Anthony of Padua. We have talked about St. Anthony before, I think. I've mentioned him briefly, probably in the last month video, because I knew that starting on the 1st of June until the 13th, it's a weird kind of novena, which is not made of 9 days, it's made of 13 days, but you know, that you dedicate to St. Anthony, and then it culminates with his feast on the 13th of June. St. Anthony, for anybody that does saint magic, is the saint that you ask for help when you lose something. And in my experience, it kind of works. Like, there are charms online, I don't need to, like, there are honestly 10 a penny, but if you Google a charm to ask St. Anthony to find something that you've lost, usually within 10 minutes, then I found it. But let me know your experience. This is gonna be fun. Okay. So, do you know the legend of fairies, elves, malignant spirits will not get into your house if you pour salt or any other kind of little grain, because there's this agreed upon, evidently, contract between the Fae that before they can come over a threshold, if there are grains, they need to count them. Oh, Italy has their legends on that as well. And they start with the grains in an ear of wheat. So this is the first harvest. Early June is the first harvest of wheat. So this is also a time where, depending on the persuasion of the place in Italy where you do it, you save between 7 and 24 ears of wheat. And those are supposed to protect your house from specifically witches. Again, I would invite you all to remember that Italy has this thing that thinks that doing witchcraft is what protects from witches. That being said, we do that first and foremost with the ears of wheat. But the idea is that if you put this bunch of wheat at your entrance, if you have a witch that supposedly, according to Italy, only go around at night, which, I mean, yeah, I don't necessarily want to use so much sunscreen that I have to go out in the sun, but that's the goth in me, not the witch in me. Anyway, because of that, if you put these ears of wheat at the entrance, the witch will have to waste time during the night counting these before entering. And surely she will not be able to count them by the time that it's sunrise, and the sunrise will repel her. How I wish I was a vampire. Because if that is supposed to repel me, at least give me the good stuff with it as well, no? And I think it's interesting because it literally mentions, the Almanac by Tiziana Granata literally mentions, this also works for protection, and that's the reason why we have the bunches of lavender. The same reason a witch or ill-intentioned spirit has to count the buds of the lavender and therefore will waste time there. We also have... oh, the broom! Oh, I love to find this out. So the superstition in Italy to have a broom, quite literally a witch's broom, in the entrance, upside down, it's exactly because the thought is that, along with grains, any evil spirit, any witch, before entering, will have to count every strand of the broom. So that's where the legend of having the broom in the entrance actually keeps witches out. Ironic, isn't it? Yes, but that's part of the same kind of legend that you need to count them all if you're evil. I don't know. It's like, I like maths, but I don't necessarily. I don't know. Do you as witches? I'm all right. Right, we're getting to St. John. Because admittedly the solstice, you know, you do you. Usually it's a celebration of the sun. There are an entire day-long rituals that you can do, one per element. But the main element really is fire, it's the sun. So you try and gather the power of the sun to last you in the rest of the year, because after this day, after the solstice, the days will get shorter and therefore there's going to be less sun. I think last year with my coven we did this ritual where we had this mirror-like plate, and I cut threads of yarn that's basked in the sun of the 21st, and then everybody took home a piece of this strand that would have the energy of the sun to keep with them throughout the darker side of the year. It's very simple. Usually has to do with the sun, in any way that you want to harvest the sun of that day. You can make water, but water doesn't last. I would make vodka, but don't quote me on that. You know, that is to say, whatever way you want to harvest and imbue the power of the sun, go for it. The 21st is your day. It is the 21st. Saturday, the 21st of June, is the solstice, because it's going to happen also, I think, at 8 a.m. in the morning, something like that. Because again, the moment of the solstice is not just that it's the longest day, it's when the sun is perpendicular to the Tropic of Cancer. I've shown it before, I don't need to go into that again because it's complicated. Oh, St. John the Baptist. Okay, in Italy we really like him. I don't know what else to say. So, the main thing of St. John is that you make water. You make healing water, and that's supposed to cure everything bad that ever happened to you. But there's a process to this water. It's not just, hey, if it was that easy, we wouldn't be here talking about it. Okay, so St. John the Baptist is the 24th of June. So, the night before, the 23rd, is when all this folkloric magic happens. You go out and you forage from the ground fresh herbs. Now, There are as many recipes for the concoction of these herbs as there are villages in Italy, so it's very much a situation where the herbs that are available are to you. You gather these herbs and you put them in a bowl of water. And then personally, because I'm a maniac, I would put like a slight net on top so that there are no bugs that go in it, but that's me. That's the autistic witch in me. Because I couldn't... That's the thing. You're gonna have to leave this water bowl outside, much like we did with the Ascension last month, because water magic is a thing in Italy during summer. I have no other way to explain that. Now, theoretically, it's because, you know, St. John the Baptist, he's the one who baptized Jesus in the waters of the river Jordan. I genuinely believe that actually this is a way that Christians also overwrote something pagan that was there before, but who knows, we'll never know. So what do we do with St. John is that we gather these herbs, we put them in water, we leave the water outside. The next morning, ideally at sunrise, but really the next morning, because late stage capitalism, the more sleep you get, the better. I advise on that. Sleep is what keeps you young. The next morning, you use this water, which is gonna be cold, I have to tell you, for experience. But you're gonna use this water to wash yourself, head everywhere. Like Tiziana and Granata euphemistically say, your nature. Because supposedly washing your body with this water is what is going to heal everything. Now, because in Italy we love a nice oxymoron or dichotomy, depending on the way that you look at this, the 23rd of June is also another one of the witches' nights. Why is that? Well, because the feast of St. John the Baptist is also considered the day that he is being beheaded. Why? Historically is absolutely not the right term for something biblical. Why, according to the tale of St. John the Baptist, did he lose his head? Well, because Salome, dancing the dance of the seven veils, is that an accurate translation? Hopefully. Oh, the king will give her everything. What do you want? According to the suggestion of her mother Herodiade, she asks for the head of John the Baptist on a silver platter. That's why we do the silver platter thing, by the way, if something is given to you easily. And so this is actually the feast of St. John the Baptist, but also the day he died. Why did he die? Because of this bad woman, for a change, because patriarchy. We're always at the... yeah, fine. And so the point is that Salome cannot possibly just be a woman. She is clearly a witch. And so is her mother Herodiade. And therefore, the night of the 23rd is a night that you need to protect yourself from witches. Because surely that night, Salome and her mother Herodiade will fly to the Noce of Benevento, which is this very filled with witchiness place in South Italy. It's considered the town of witches. I'm not sure why. I need to look into that. Because I remember my friend Freddie, who is from South Italy, also told me that. And I was like, he's saying it with a way that sounds obvious that is not obvious to me. I need to find out. Tell me about Benevento. But yeah, it's considered a gathering place for witches. And supposedly, Salome and Herodiade fly there, because witches, therefore broom, but also the never mind. And there in Benevento, they surely would meet Hecate, Diana, the Harpies, the Moires, and I'm like, it's a party, I would go. Like, what are we doing here? Like, we clearly need to be there in Benevento on the 23rd of June, if you ask me. That's a party I would definitely go to. Funny anecdotal thing is that if you don't make the water in the bowl that stays outside, something that people used to do in the countryside was wake up at sunrise, naked like the day that they were born, throw themselves in the field and roll around in the field, because that way the dew, the morning dew of the night of St. John would, you know, cover their bodies, and therefore the healing properties would be there. Do I advise you to do that? No, this does not constitute advice at any point. This is just folklore. There's also a divination practice that has to do with finding out who you will marry. So on the night of the 23rd, you go to sleep with un rametto. What the fuck is a rametto in English? I hate mixing English and Italian, then I forget both languages. You take a piece of rosemary, you put it under the pillow, And the recitation, the charm to say is Luna che in ciel risplendi, fammi sognar dormendo, chi sposerò vivendo, which means, O moon who are up, shining in the sky, let me dream while I sleep of the person who I will marry while I live. It's rhyme, I'm translating on the fly. I also would not exclude the possibility that this spell specifically is asked to the moon rather than, saints and stuff, exactly because in this season and close to the solstice, we have the new moon in Cancer. And as we saw, the moon rules Cancer, so this is a time for divination, for introspection, for emotions, for psychic abilities. So I wouldn't discount the possibility that that is actually the tradition that is based in Italy, for the simple fact that we know that there's the new moon in Cancer, the moon ruled Cancer, henceforth divination, family, love, because emotions. That's my 2 cents on that. Oh, these I love because, again, Italy is naturally witchy, but they will never say that. So, in the northernmost east region of Italy, Friuli Venezia Giulia, which is basically Slovenia, but, we still are deciding on the borders there, they have a tradition, and the tradition is called the Mac of San Juan. I don't know what the Mac is, but San Juan is St. John. Basically, what you do is this. At sunrise on the 24th of June, St. John, you go out and gather these herbs. So the herbs that are part of this bundle that you gather on the sunrise of the 24th are mugwort, laurel leaves, rosemary, and rue, because rue is very protective. You make a bundle of these herbs that supposedly still have the morning dew of this magic night of St. John, and you bring them to Mass, because supposedly, in villages you had Mass every day at noon. You bring this bundle to the Mass on the 24th of the noon Mass, it gets blessed in the church, and you keep this bundle throughout the entirety of the rest of the year. And from time to time, you burn a bit of this bundle when you need protection or purification, which is just fumigation. And that's why I say, you think that you have to go and steal white sage from Native American tradition when they tell you not to do it. There are all these traditions that is still fumigation. Take one of these. They're not closed. Go for it. The next magical thing in the calendar for Italy in June is St. Peter and Paul, which is the 29th of June. Now, St. Peter and Paul just blatantly overwrote a Roman festival that was for, I think, Quirino and Romolo. Romolo was the founder of Rome, which is about free men. And Peter and Paul supposedly were fishermen, supposedly, were independent and all of that. Fine. I have my thoughts and reservation about Paul, as you will well know. But you can watch the episode that I did with Astra, where she breaks a lot of the common beliefs about St. Paul. The point is, most Christians still believe them and go for it, and he's supposed misogyny, so I don't know. Do we keep fault with the man, or do we keep fault with people that use the word of the man to actually oppress others? I'll leave you to choose. The tradition that we have in Italy, the night again before the 29th, that is St. Peter and Paul, is to make the boat of St. Peter. Now, the legend has it, the lore has it, that St. Peter was actually Simon Pietro. So when Jesus goes to find him, he's coming to shore on his boat because he's a fisherman. Oh no, you're not Simon, you're Peter, and on your stone I will erect the church of my... Yeah, I don't know how to translate the Bible for how I remember it, but you know the story, okay? So Peter is a fisherman, and supposedly, if the night before the 29th, so on the 28th evening, you have a container that is made of glass, you put water in it, and then you take an egg, room temperature, and you crack the egg, and just the white of the egg you pour into the water, and you leave it outside, possibly with the container being in contact with dirt, with the ground, with the earth. The next morning, by sunrise, you wake up and you will find streaks of egg that supposedly just this day, not quite, but supposedly they will show you streaks that look like sails on a boat, because St. Peter was a fisherman, and so supposedly St. Peter goes to touch all of these containers that are out on his night. Realistically, Even Tiziana Granata thinks that this is actually a pagan tradition that has been acquired and cannibalized by Christianity, because the idea was that the container full of water represented the divine feminine, the egg white very closely resembles the idea of the divine masculine, and quite literally seed, sperm, and put out together you would have basically a way to do divination on things. So you can either ask a question, and according to how high these peaks are, you get a positive, and otherwise, if the peaks are very low, you get a negative to your question. If there are a lot of bubbles, it means abundance. If actually more than a sailboat, it resembles sort of the peaks of a cathedral, there might be a wedding coming up. That's what Italy believes. And realistically, more than the personal questions, this was a form of divination for the harvest to come. That's what it was. The highest the sails on the boat, the better the harvest would have yielded. That's the original, I think, pagan belief behind this kind of divination. The very last bit has to do with the fact that apparently there's the belief that on this day, the 29th, being St. Peter and Paul, it's also a day of storms. Because, and here's the lore, that's fascinating, okay. It was taken so seriously that on the Lago di Seo, which is actually in the northwest, where I come from, not so close, but sort of. No, this was such a superstitious day that not only fishermen would not take boats and go on the lake, people could not touch the water, because that's such a dangerous day. Why is that? It's supposed to be the tempest, the storm, brought by the mother of St. Peter, who apparently was an awful woman that ended up in hell. But St. Peter was so sad that his mom did not make it to heaven, that begged God to bring her, let him bring her to heaven. And God, always with his irony, which it's funny considering they should be all loving. But anyway, says, you know what, your mom has done one good thing in her life, which was gifting a poor person with an onion. So if you can make a rope out of all the thin layers of the onion, you can bring her up. You can use the rope to bring her up. That's kind of an ironic. Is it just fine? Okay. St. Peter makes the rope, throws the rope down to hell to his mom, and the mom starts climbing. But as the others condemned people of hell realize what's happening, they also try to climb on this rope, which, rightfully being made of onion, starts to break. And so supposedly the thunder, the lightning, the terrible storm of the 29th of June is actually Peter's mom, who is shouting as all the damned of hell are actually breaking her rope and destroying her chance to get to heaven. And with that, we have exhausted our folk tales for June in the British and the Italian tradition. I hope that that was at the very least entertaining. And if you do anything, if you do any rituals, let me know, because it's fun. I don't know if I'll have spoons to do much, but you know, it's always interesting to hear. I'll definitely do stuff for Vestalia, because But until the next video, I really hope that we can hex the patriarchy together, because fuck me if there's need for it. Look at me pancino. I have a pancino. I have such a pancino. Look at the pancino. Ha! Look at the pancino. Look at the pancino. In the light. Pancino in the light.